the early years of the ministry and we were in Russia. It was so cold, minus 35 degrees Celsius, minus 31 degrees Fahrenheit. And I want to tell you about something which to me was extraordinary that happened while we were there. I'm Daphne Kirk of Generation to Generation. Andrew and Daniella were just small and we had travelled by train from the Ukraine into Russia. And when we got off the train, we had to wait by the side of the track as the train moved past, and the cold just gripped us right into our bones. It was almost as if clothes were irrelevant. And when the train passed, we stepped over the tracks and got in the car. Now the inside of the car was covered with ice. And as we travelled to the place where we were going to stay, we passed lakes that were absolutely frozen over. And of course people were walking on it and skating on it. But some people were making holes in the ice and jumping into the freezing water. Some of these people were quite elderly and they believed that if you jumped in, it would actually cure you of any heart problems. I just want to tell you this, it would actually give me a heart problem if I jumped into that freezing water. So when we got to our home, Andrew and Daniella would climb up to about the 3rd floor and they would climb out the window and jump into the snow, which was really, really thick ice and snow. Well, not ice, but snow. And the local people would look at them and think, these Westerners, this is normal for us. But eventually, other pastors were climbing up too and jumping into the piles of snow. So we had a great time, a lot of fun, and we actually got used to the cold. But I want to tell you something that happened in one of the meetings. And we were giving our generation to generation message as we have all around the world. One side of the room were these elderly Russian people, the little babushkas of the nation. And they had their long skirts on and they had their hymn books and they were singing. And the other side of the room were the young people and they were dancing and they were lifting up their hands and they were being very, very expressive. And you could feel the tension between these two generations. You didn't need a space in the middle of the room to tell you that there was a generation gap. And as we began to speak, gradually the older generation realised that they had paid a price, many of them in prison under communist Russia as they stood for Jesus. Many of them realised we paid that price so these young people could have the freedom they have today. We paid a price so that they wouldn't have to go to prison, so that they could worship him, even if it's not the same way that we do. And the young people realised that the freedom that they have today was because of the generation before them. And a sense of repentance came over these young people as they realised that the attitude they have and the way they had separated them was actually a deep, deep hurt in the heart of God. And in one moment, it was as if heaven had orchestrated this. In fact, I'm sure heaven did. Because the young people got out their seats and they ran across the room crying and they flung themselves into the lap of these elderly people. And the elderly people just hugged them and they began to weep. In that moment, both generations had an appreciation of who they were, while at the same time honouring and appreciating the other generation. So I want to finish with this. Whatever generation you're in, I pray that you will have a deep appreciation for your generation and that you will serve the purpose of God in your generation. But more than that, you will also have an appreciation of the generations around you and an honouring of them. Because God is the God of the generations. He's the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. And Jesus prayed that we would be one. And that includes unity of the generations.